the modern fear that's destroying your life. Picture this, you're scrolling through job listings in Manhattan and you find the perfect position. It's everything you've dreamed of, but there's one problem, it feels slightly out of your league. Your finger hovers over that apply button, but instead of clicking, you close the browser. Sound familiar? Or maybe you're at a coffee shop in downtown Chicago and you spot someone who catches your eye. They're reading a book you love, wearing a band t-shirt from your favorite group. Every instinct tells you to walk over and strike up a conversation, but you don't. You finish your latte in silence and leave, wondering what if for the rest of the day. This isn't just shyness or being careful, this is the modern epidemic of rejection avoidance, and it's quietly destroying millions of lives across America. We've become so terrified of hearing no that we've stopped asking the questions that could change everything. Think about it. How many opportunities have you missed because you were afraid someone might reject you? How many potential relationships, friendships, career advances, or life-changing moments slipped away because the possibility of rejection felt too painful to risk? The irony is devastating. In trying to protect ourselves from the temporary sting of rejection, we've created a permanent prison of missed opportunities. We've traded the possibility of extraordinary for the guarantee of ordinary. But here's what most people don't realize. This fear isn't natural or inevitable. It's learned, and more importantly, it can be unlearned. 2,000 years ago, a group of ancient philosophers figured out something revolutionary about rejection that modern psychology is just beginning to understand. The Stoics, Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca didn't just tolerate rejection. They transformed it into their secret weapon. These weren't sheltered academics writing theories in ivory towers. Marcus Aurelius ruled the Roman Empire while facing constant political rejection and betrayal. Epictetus was born a slave who experienced the ultimate rejection, being treated as property. Seneca navigated the treacherous waters of Roman politics where one wrong move meant exile or death. Yet all three discovered something extraordinary. Rejection isn't the enemy of a fulfilling life, it's the gateway to it. They developed practical techniques that turned every no into fuel for growth, every closed door into wisdom, and every painful rejection into unshakable inner strength. What if I told you that by the end of this video you'll understand exactly how they did it? That you'll have the same tools these ancient masters used to face any rejection with courage and even gratitude? The Stoics proved that when you change your relationship with rejection, you don't just overcome a fear, you unlock a completely different way of living. A life where you pursue what matters most without the constant anxiety of what others might think. A life where rejection becomes impossible because you've learned the secret of finding victory in every outcome. But before we can overcome this fear, we need to understand why other people's opinions have such power over us in the first place. 1. Why everyone's opinion controls your mind. From the moment we're born, we're wired for survival, and for humans, survival has always meant belonging to the group. Think about a 5-year-old on a Brooklyn playground, desperately wanting to join the other kids playing tag. When they say, "You can't play with us," it's not just disappointing, it feels like a threat to their very existence. This isn't dramatic thinking. For thousands of years, being rejected by your tribe meant death. No protection from predators, no shared resources, no chance of survival. Our brains still carry this ancient programming, which is why rejection triggers the same neural pathways as physical pain. When someone says no to us, our brain literally interprets it as a wound. Fast forward to adult life in modern America, and this survival mechanism has gone haywire. Your brain can't tell the difference between being rejected by your Stone Age tribe and being turned down for a date in downtown Los Angeles. The emotional response is identical: panic, shame, and an overwhelming sense that your survival is at stake. This is why Sarah, a brilliant marketing executive in Seattle, spent 3 months perfecting her resume for a dream job but never submitted it. Her rational mind knew rejection wouldn't kill her, but her ancient brain was screaming warnings about tribal exile and certain death. She chose the safety of never trying over the risk of being told she wasn't good enough. Consider how this plays out in modern relationships. Jake, a graphic designer in Miami, has been single for 2 years not because he can't meet people, but because he's terrified of approaching anyone who might reject him. He's created an elaborate system of waiting for absolutely clear signals of interest before making any move. The problem? Those signals rarely come because most people are just as afraid of rejection as he is. The workplace amplifies this fear even more. Jennifer, a talented engineer in Denver, watches less qualified colleagues get promoted while she stays silent in meetings. She has brilliant ideas but won't speak up because she's afraid her suggestions might be dismissed. She's essentially rejecting herself before anyone else gets the chance. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus understood this human tendency better than anyone. Born into slavery in ancient Rome, he experienced the ultimate form of social rejection, being treated as property rather than a person. Yet he discovered something revolutionary: other people's opinions only have the power we give them. Epictetus spent his early life having no control over his circumstances. His master could sell him, beat him, or kill him on a whim. But even in chains, he realized there was one thing no one could control: his mind. This insight became the foundation of his teaching. We are not our circumstances, we are our choices. He taught that we suffer not from events themselves, but from our judgments about those events. When someone rejects us, we immediately create a story. They think I'm not good enough, I'm inadequate, I don't belong here. But these are our interpretations, not facts. The rejection is just an external event. What we make it mean is entirely up to us. Consider Marcus, a software developer in Austin who got rejected after 3 rounds of interviews at his dream company. He spent weeks convinced this meant he was a failure, that he'd never succeed in tech. He replayed every moment of the interviews, analyzing every word, convinced he'd revealed some fatal flaw that made him unemployable. But the truth? The company had already decided to promote someone internally before they even posted the job. The interviews were just a formality to satisfy HR requirements. Marcus's rejection had absolutely nothing to do with his worth or abilities. He created an entire narrative of personal inadequacy based on incomplete information. Epictetus would say Marcus gave away his mental freedom the moment he let strangers determine his self-worth. He taught his students a fundamental principle about what we can and cannot control. We cannot control whether others accept or reject us. We cannot control their opinions, their moods, their criteria for decision-making, or their personal biases. We can only control our own thoughts, actions, and responses. When we base our happiness on whether others accept or reject us, we're essentially handing control of our minds to random people who barely know us. Think about this logically. The person who rejects you for a job has spent maybe 2 hours with you total. They've seen you in an artificial environment, under stress, answering scripted questions. They know nothing about your character, your work ethic, your creativity, or your potential for growth. The person who turns you down for a date knows even less. They've made a split-second judgment based on appearance, a brief conversation, or a dating app profile. Yet we give these people, who have incomplete information at best, the power to determine how we feel about ourselves for days, weeks, or even months. This is what Epictetus called being enslaved to externals. When our emotional state depends on things outside our control, we become prisoners of circumstances we cannot influence. We're like ships without anchors, tossed around by every wind of opinion that comes our way. The Stoics had a different approach. They distinguished between what they called preferred indifference and true goods. Preferred indifference are things that might be nice to have but aren't necessary for our well-being or virtue. A good job, an attractive partner, social approval, these fall into this category. They're pleasant when they happen, but they're not required for a good life. True goods, according to the Stoics, are things like wisdom, courage, justice, and self-discipline. These are entirely within our control and cannot be taken away by external circumstances. No one can reject your character. No one can vote against your integrity. No one can dismiss your commitment to growth and virtue. When we understand this distinction, rejection loses its sting. If someone doesn't want to hire us, date us, or befriend us, they're simply expressing a preference about externals. They're not making a judgment about our worth as human beings or our capacity for virtue and happiness. Now that we understand why we crave approval, let's examine what the Stoics discovered about the people whose opinions we fear so much. 2. The truth about other people's judgments. Here's a sobering truth that will change how you view rejection forever. Most people's judgments are based on incomplete information, personal biases, and factors that have nothing to do with your actual worth or capabilities. The Stoic philosophers understood this deeply, and once you see what they saw, you'll never take rejection personally again. Let's start with a real scenario. Amanda, a marketing professional in Chicago, applied for her dream job at a tech startup. She had perfect qualifications, glowing references, and aced the technical interview. But she was rejected. Later, through a mutual contact, she discovered why. The hiring manager had gone to the same college as another candidate and felt more comfortable with that choice. Amanda's rejection had nothing to do with her abilities and everything to do with the manager's unconscious bias toward familiarity. This happens constantly in every area of life. People reject potential romantic partners because they're too tall or too short, dismiss brilliant ideas because they come from someone too young or too old, and exclude qualified candidates because of arbitrary preferences that change with their mood. Marcus Aurelius, who ruled the Roman Empire and dealt with countless people seeking his approval or fearing his rejection, wrote extensively about the unreliability of human judgment. He observed that people's opinions are shaped by their limited perspective, their current emotional state, their personal insecurities, and their own narrow experience of the world. Consider how this plays out in modern dating. David, a kind and successful teacher in Portland, was rejected by 3 different women in 1 month. The first said he was too nice, the second thought he was too serious about his career, and the third felt he was not ambitious enough. Same person, completely contradictory judgments. Each woman was projecting her own fears, past experiences, and current life situation onto David rather than seeing him clearly. Marcus Aurelius would remind us that when people judge us, they're not really seeing us at all. They're seeing their own reflection, their own limitations, their own story about what they think they want or need. In his meditations, he wrote about how people's opinions are like shadows on a wall. They tell you more about the light source and the obstacles in between than they do about the object casting the shadow. The workplace provides even more dramatic examples. Lisa, a brilliant software engineer in San Francisco, was passed over for promotion repeatedly. Her manager claimed she wasn't leadership material and lacked executive presence. 6 months later, that same manager was fired for incompetence, and Lisa was promoted by the new leadership team, who immediately recognized her potential. The first manager's judgment wasn't about Lisa's capabilities, it was about his own insecurity and fear of being outshone by someone more talented. Seneca, the Roman statesman and Stoic philosopher, dealt with this reality daily in the treacherous world of imperial politics. He understood that people's judgments are often driven by factors completely unrelated to merit: jealousy, fear, political calculation, personal grudges, or simple ignorance. He learned not to take these judgments as reflections of his worth, but as information about the judge's character and circumstances. Think about how arbitrary most rejection criteria really are. Restaurants reject customers based on dress codes that have nothing to do with their ability to pay or behave appropriately. Universities reject brilliant students because they don't fit some predetermined demographic mix. Companies reject innovative proposals because they threaten the status quo or make someone uncomfortable. Even more revealing is how the same person can be rejected by one group and celebrated by another. Steve Jobs was fired from Apple, the company he founded, because the board thought he was too difficult and visionary. Years later, that same difficult vision saved the company and made him a legend. The rejection wasn't about his inadequacy, it was about the board's inability to recognize genius when they saw it. Marcus Aurelius taught that most people operate from a place of fear, ignorance, or self-interest. They're not making careful, rational assessments of your worth. They're making quick decisions based on limited information filtered through their own biases and emotional state. Understanding this doesn't mean judging them harshly, it means recognizing the inherent limitations of human judgment. Consider social rejection, which often feels the most personal. Kevin, a graduate student in Boston, was excluded from a friend group after expressing different political views. The group claimed he was toxic and close-minded. But what really happened? Kevin had challenged their echo chamber, making them uncomfortable with perspectives they hadn't considered. Their rejection was a defense mechanism, not a fair assessment of his character. The Stoics understood that people reject what threatens their worldview, challenges their assumptions, or makes them feel insecure about their own choices. When someone rejects you for being too ambitious, they might be insecure about their own lack of drive. When they say you're too emotional, they might be uncomfortable with their own suppressed feelings. When they claim you're not their type, they might be afraid of stepping outside their comfort zone. Epictetus, who experienced rejection in its most extreme form as a slave, developed a powerful perspective on this. He realized that when people judge us harshly, they're often revealing more about their own character than ours. A person who rejects others based on superficial criteria is showing their own shallowness. Someone who dismisses others without getting to know them is demonstrating their own closed-mindedness. This doesn't mean all rejection is unfair or meaningless. Sometimes we genuinely aren't the right fit for a situation, and that's valuable information. But the key is distinguishing between useful feedback and arbitrary judgment. Useful feedback is specific, actionable, and based on relevant criteria. Arbitrary judgment is vague, personal, and based on irrelevant factors. The most liberating realization is this: if someone rejects you based on incomplete information, personal bias, or arbitrary criteria, their rejection actually protects you from a situation where you wouldn't have been valued or understood anyway. Marcus Aurelius called this the providence of rejection, the universe's way of steering you away from people and situations that aren't aligned with your highest good. Once we see the truth about others' judgments, we can learn the Stoics' secret to embracing whatever happens, regardless of how others react to us. 3. How to love your fate even when it hurts. What if I told you there was a way to not just accept rejection, but to actually love it? That sounds impossible, maybe even masochistic, but the Stoics discovered something profound. When you learn to embrace whatever happens to you, including rejection, you become truly free. They called this practice amor fati, which literally means love of fate. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the ancient world, practiced amor fati daily. Despite having the authority to punish anyone who opposed him, he chose instead to embrace every setback, every political betrayal, every personal disappointment as exactly what needed to happen. This wasn't passive resignation, it was an active choice to find meaning and growth in every experience. Let's understand what this looks like in practice. Rachel, a screenwriter in Los Angeles, spent 2 years developing a script that she was certain would launch her career. She pitched it to 12 production companies and received 12 rejections. Each no felt like a personal attack on her talent and dreams. She was ready to give up writing entirely. But then Rachel discovered Marcus Aurelius's approach to setbacks. Instead of fighting against her rejections, she began to ask different questions. What if these rejections are exactly what I need right now? What if they're protecting me from something or preparing me for something better? This shift in perspective changed everything. She realized that the rejections had forced her to improve her craft, develop thicker skin, and clarify her vision. 6 months later, she wrote a completely different script, one that was far superior to her original. This new script was optioned by the first company she pitched it to. The rejections hadn't been obstacles to her success, they had been the path to it. Marcus Aurelius understood that our suffering comes not from what happens to us, but from our resistance to what happens to us. When we demand that reality be different than it is, we create unnecessary pain. But when we align ourselves with what's actually happening, when we love our fate instead of fighting it, we find peace and power in any situation. This doesn't mean becoming passive or giving up on our goals. Amor Fati is about changing our relationship with outcomes while maintaining our commitment to virtuous action. We still pursue what we want, but we don't attach our happiness to getting it. Consider Tom, a software engineer in Seattle who applied for a senior position at his dream company. He prepared for months, aced the technical interviews, and felt confident about his chances. When he was rejected, his first instinct was anger and disappointment. But Tom had been studying Stoic philosophy, so he tried a different approach. Instead of ruminating on what went wrong, Tom practiced Amor Fati. He told himself, this rejection is exactly what was supposed to happen. The universe is steering me towards something better. 3 weeks later, a startup he'd never heard of reached out with an offer that included equity, flexible hours, and the chance to work on cutting-edge technology. The rejection from his dream job had freed him up for an opportunity that was actually better aligned with his values and goals. Epictetus taught that we suffer when we desire things to be different than they are. He distinguished between what he called impressions and judgments. The impression is the raw fact, I was rejected. The judgment is the story we add, this means I'm not good enough, or this is terrible, or my life is ruined. The impression is neutral, the judgment creates suffering. But here's where Amor Fati gets really powerful. We can choose to add positive judgments instead. When faced with rejection, we can tell ourselves, this is exactly what I needed, or this is preparing me for something better, or this is teaching me valuable lessons. These aren't just feel-good platitudes, they're strategic choices that preserve our mental freedom and keep us moving forward. Sarah, a marketing professional in Denver, was laid off from her job during a company restructuring. Her initial reaction was panic and shame. She felt rejected not just by her employer, but by the entire industry. But instead of spiraling into despair, she practiced Amor Fati. She told herself, this layoff is fate's way of pushing me toward my next chapter. This mindset shift allowed Sarah to approach her job search with curiosity rather than desperation. She explored opportunities she never would have considered while employed. 6 months later, she launched her own consulting business and was earning twice what she'd made at her corporate job. The rejection she'd feared had become the catalyst for the career she'd always wanted but never had the courage to pursue. Marcus Aurelius wrote, accept the things to which fate binds you and love the people with whom fate brings you together. This includes loving the people who reject you because they're playing their part in your story. The hiring manager who doesn't choose you, the romantic interest who isn't interested, the friend who drifts away, they're all contributing to your growth and directing you toward where you need to be. The Stoics understood that we live in an interconnected universe where everything happens for a reason, even if we can't see that reason immediately. When we practice amor fati, we align ourselves with this cosmic order instead of fighting against it. We become partners with fate rather than victims of circumstance. This practice requires what Epictetus called the discipline of desire. Instead of desiring specific outcomes, we learn to desire whatever actually happens. This doesn't make us passive, we still take action toward our goals. But we hold those goals lightly, ready to embrace whatever results from our efforts. The beautiful paradox of amor fati is that when you stop needing specific outcomes, you often get better outcomes than you originally wanted. When you're not desperate for approval, people are more likely to approve of you. When you're not attached to particular opportunities, you notice better opportunities you might have missed. But here's where Stoic wisdom gets really powerful. Sometimes what feels like rejection is actually the universe's way of protecting us from situations that would ultimately harm us. 4. When rejection becomes your greatest gift. Imagine you're standing on the edge of a cliff, about to jump into the water below. The thrill of the leap is tantalizing, but so is the fear of the unknown. You hesitate, wondering what will happen if you plunge into the depths. This is the essence of rejection. It feels terrifying, yet it can lead to profound transformation. Rejection is a universal experience, one that we often dread. But what if I told you that rejection can actually become one of your greatest gifts? The Stoics believed that every obstacle can be turned into an opportunity, and every rejection can lead us closer to our true path in life. This perspective is crucial in a world where we frequently face setbacks. Consider the story of Emma, an aspiring artist in New York City. She spent years perfecting her craft and dreaming of her first gallery show. When the day finally arrived, she was ecstatic. But after submitting her application to several galleries, she received rejection after rejection. Each email felt like a dagger to her heart, telling her she wasn't good enough. However, instead of giving up, Emma decided to reflect on her experiences through a Stoic lens. She began to ask herself, what can I learn from these rejections? She realized that many of the galleries she had approached were not aligned with her artistic vision. Their themes and styles were often at odds with her own. With this realization, she understood that these rejections were not reflections of her talent, but rather signs that she needed to find the right audience for her unique voice. Taking this insight to heart, Emma began to explore alternative venues. She started attending local art fairs and networking with other artists. Through these connections, she discovered a small community gallery that celebrated emerging artists like herself. She submitted her work and was accepted for a solo exhibit. The same rejection that had initially felt like a defeat became a pivotal moment in her artistic journey, leading her to the exact opportunity she needed. This transformation mirrors the Stoic principle of viewing obstacles as pathways to growth. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." This powerful statement encapsulates the Stoic belief that challenges and rejections are not barriers, they are integral parts of our journey. When we encounter rejection, it's easy to spiral into self-doubt. We might think, I'm not good enough, or I'll never succeed. But the Stoics remind us that these thoughts are merely judgments that we can choose to change. Instead of viewing rejection as a dead end, we can see it as an invitation to redirect our efforts towards something more fitting. Take the example of Mark, a recent college graduate who applied for multiple positions in finance. After weeks of interviews, he received a rejection letter from his top choice. Initially, he was crushed. He had worked tirelessly to prepare for those interviews and felt that he had invested so much of himself in the process. However, after a period of reflection, Mark remembered the Stoic teachings about controlling one's perceptions. He decided to view this rejection not as a personal failure but as a chance to reevaluate his career path. Instead of continuing to chase a job that might not have been right for him, he began to explore other fields that aligned better with his passions like nonprofit work and social entrepreneurship. Within a few months, he landed a role at a nonprofit organization that focused on financial literacy, combining his skills with his desire to make a positive impact in the community. The rejection that initially felt devastating had led him to a fulfilling career he hadn't considered before. The Stoics taught that our misfortunes can often be blessings in disguise. Seneca, another prominent Stoic philosopher, elaborated on this idea when he stated, "A good character, when it is tested by adversity, will be stronger." He believed that facing challenges, including rejection, can help us develop resilience and fortitude. The trials we endure shape us into stronger individuals, allowing us to rise above difficulties with grace. Consider how rejection can lead to self-discovery. When we are told no, it often prompts us to reflect on our goals and desires. Are we truly pursuing what we want, or have we been influenced by societal expectations? This kind of introspection can be invaluable. It encourages us to align our actions with our authentic selves. One way to embrace rejection as a gift is to practice gratitude. When faced with a setback, take a moment to reflect on what you can be thankful for. This shift in mindset can transform your perspective. Instead of feeling defeated, you might find yourself appreciating the lessons learned and the newfound clarity that rejection brings. For example, consider Jessica, a young entrepreneur who launched her startup only to face several setbacks and rejections from investors. After a particularly harsh rejection, she took a step back and asked herself what she could learn from the experience. Instead of giving in to despair, she sought feedback from the investors who had turned her down. Their insights helped her refine her pitch and clarify her business model. Ultimately, she secured funding from a different group of investors who appreciated her perseverance and improved approach. Rejection can also serve as a catalyst for improvement. It pushes us to develop our skills and refine our ideas. The Stoics emphasized the importance of continuous growth and learning. When we face rejection, we have the opportunity to assess our weaknesses and work on them. This process not only enhances our capabilities but also increases our resilience in the face of future challenges. Moreover, when we embrace rejection, we cultivate a sense of detachment from the outcomes of our efforts. This Stoic principle of preferred indifference teaches us that while we can strive for certain results, we should not tie our self-worth to them. Our value as individuals is inherent and not dependent on external validation. This mindset allows us to pursue our goals with passion while remaining open to whatever outcomes may arise. As we navigate the complexities of life, it's essential to remember that rejection is not a reflection of our worth but rather a step along the path to our true purpose. Each no can lead us closer to the right yes. By reframing our experiences and embracing the lessons that come from rejection, we can unlock new opportunities and discover our resilience. In conclusion, the Stoic perspective on rejection teaches us that setbacks are not the end of the road but rather valuable moments of growth. By embracing a more fatty and viewing rejection as an integral part of our journey, we can learn to navigate life's challenges with confidence and grace. Remember, every rejection is an invitation to redirect our efforts towards something greater. So the next time you face rejection, ask yourself, what gift is this experience offering me? 5. The Stoic practice that kills fear forever. Fear of rejection is a powerful and paralyzing emotion, one that can hold us back from pursuing our goals, dreams, and even meaningful relationships. However, the Stoics have provided us with practical tools and techniques to transform this fear into a source of strength and resilience. By incorporating these practices into our lives, we can learn to navigate rejection with courage and confidence, ultimately freeing ourselves from the shackles of fear. One of the most effective Stoic practices for combating fear is called negative visualization or premeditatio malorum. This technique involves imagining the worst-case scenario before you take action. While this may sound counterintuitive, it serves several purposes. First, it helps you confront your fears directly and recognize that the worst is often not as terrible as it seems. Second, it prepares you mentally for potential outcomes, allowing you to respond with equanimity if they do occur. Let's take the example of Mark, who is preparing to ask his boss for a raise. As the day approaches, Mark feels a growing sense of anxiety. What if his boss says no? What if he appears ungrateful? Instead of allowing these thoughts to spiral, Mark practices negative visualization. He imagines the worst-case scenario. His boss firmly declines his request, and the conversation ends awkwardly. He visualizes the feelings of disappointment and rejection that might wash over him. However, as Mark continues to visualize this outcome, he realizes something crucial. Even if his boss says no, he will still have his job, his skills, and the opportunity to continue proving his worth. He can ask for feedback on what he needs to improve for future discussions. By mentally rehearsing this scenario, Mark not only alleviates some of his anxiety but also empowers himself to take action. Negative visualization helps us detach from the fear of rejection by normalizing the possibility of failure. The Stoics believed that by preparing for adversity, we can face it with greater resilience when it inevitably arises. This practice teaches us that rejection is not the end of the world, it is simply a part of the journey. Another vital Stoic principle is the dichotomy of control, which emphasizes distinguishing between what is within our control and what is not. Epictetus, one of the most influential Stoic philosophers, famously stated, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." When faced with rejection, we often focus on external circumstances that are beyond our control, other people's opinions, decisions, and judgments. Instead, we should concentrate on our actions, responses, and attitudes. For example, if you apply for a job and are rejected, you cannot control the hiring manager's decisions or preferences. However, you can control how you respond to that rejection. You can choose to learn from the experience, seek feedback, and improve your approach for future opportunities. By focusing on what you can control, you take back your power and reduce the emotional burden of rejection. Let's consider the story of Lisa, a young entrepreneur who launched her startup with high hopes. After months of hard work, she finally pitched her business idea to a group of investors. To her dismay, they turned her down. Initially, Lisa felt crushed and defeated. But after reflecting on the dichotomy of control, she recognized that she could not control the investors' decision. Instead, she could control her next steps. Lisa decided to gather feedback from the investors who had rejected her. She reached out to them asking for their insights on her pitch and business model. Their constructive criticism helped her refine her approach and clarify her vision. Eventually, she secured funding from a different group of investors who saw the potential in her revised proposal. The initial rejection had propelled her toward a better outcome. By embracing the dichotomy of control, Lisa transformed her fear of rejection into a catalyst for growth and improvement. This mindset shift is fundamental to Stoic philosophy and can help anyone facing similar challenges. Another powerful Stoic practice is the cultivation of self-compassion. When we face rejection, we often become our harshest critics. We may berate ourselves for not being good enough or for taking risks that led to failure. However, the Stoics remind us to treat ourselves with kindness and understanding. After all, everyone experiences rejection at some point in their lives. When we practice self-compassion, we create a safe space for ourselves to process our emotions without judgment. Instead of spiraling into self-doubt, we acknowledge our feelings and remind ourselves that rejection is a shared human experience. We can draw strength from our vulnerability and learn to embrace our imperfections. Consider the example of Brian, a talented musician who auditioned for a prestigious music competition. After months of preparation, he performed beautifully but was ultimately rejected. Instead of allowing this setback to define him, Brian practiced self-compassion. He recognized that many successful musicians had faced similar rejections before achieving their dreams. Brian took time to reflect on his performance and identify areas for improvement, but he also celebrated his effort and commitment. He reminded himself that rejection did not diminish his talent or passion for music. With this newfound perspective, Brian continued to pursue opportunities and eventually landed a record deal that exceeded his wildest expectations. The Stoics understood the importance of community and support in overcoming rejection. Surrounding ourselves with encouraging and like-minded individuals can significantly bolster our resilience. Seek out friends, mentors, or support groups who understand the challenges of rejection and can provide perspective and encouragement. Sharing our experiences and learning from others can help us navigate our fears more effectively. Finally, the Stoics emphasized the importance of living in accordance with our values. When we align our actions with our core principles, we become less reliant on external validation. Instead of seeking approval from others, we find fulfillment in pursuing what genuinely matters to us. This shift in focus can greatly reduce our fear of rejection. For instance, if your value is to foster connections and build meaningful relationships, you might choose to express your feelings to someone despite the fear of rejection. By prioritizing your values, you empower yourself to take risks that align with your true self. As you navigate the complexities of life, remember that rejection is not a reflection of your worth, but rather a moment in your journey. By practicing negative visualization, embracing the dichotomy of control, cultivating self-compassion, building a supportive community, and living according to your values, you can transform your relationship with rejection. Through these Stoic practices, you will find that fear diminishes and confidence flourishes. You will learn to approach life's challenges with courage, knowing that rejection is not the end but rather an opportunity for growth. The Stoics teach us that every rejection is a stepping stone toward our true purpose, and by embracing it, we can unlock our fullest potential. In conclusion, the Stoic practices that kill fear forever are not just theoretical concepts. They are practical tools that can be applied in our daily lives. By incorporating negative visualization, the dichotomy of control, self-compassion, community support, and value alignment, we can navigate rejection with grace and resilience. Remember, the power to transform rejection into a gift lies within you. Embrace it and you will find freedom from fear. Your rejection-proof life starts now. As we've explored throughout this journey into Stoic philosophy and the nature of rejection, it's clear that how we respond to setbacks can define our path forward. Rejection is an inevitable part of life, but it doesn't have to dictate our self-worth or our future. Instead, we can choose to embrace it as a powerful teacher, guiding us toward growth, resilience, and ultimately, success. The key takeaway is this: every rejection carries with it the seeds of opportunity. Just as the Stoics taught us to view obstacles as pathways to growth, we must recognize that each no can lead us closer to the right yes. This is not merely a hopeful platitude. It's a practical strategy for living a fulfilling life. By cultivating a mindset that welcomes rejection, we free ourselves from the chains of fear and self-doubt. Remember the stories of Emma, Mark, Lisa, and Brian. Their journeys illustrate that rejection doesn't mean failure. It means redirection. Each encountered roadblock pushed them to reassess their goals, refine their approaches, and ultimately discover paths that aligned more closely with their true selves. When we adopt this perspective, we transform rejection from a source of pain into a stepping stone toward our aspirations. Now, it's time for you to take action. Embrace the practices we've discussed. Engage in negative visualization. Recognize the dichotomy of control. Cultivate self-compassion. Seek supportive communities. And align your actions with your values. These Stoic principles are not just theoretical concepts. They are practical tools you can implement in your daily life to build resilience against rejection. As you move forward, challenge yourself to reframe your experiences with rejection. When faced with a setback, instead of succumbing to feelings of inadequacy, ask yourself, what can I learn from this? How can I grow? This mindset shift will empower you to face life's challenges with newfound courage and determination. The Stoics understood that true strength lies not in avoiding rejection but in how we respond to it. They embraced the idea of amor fati, loving one's fate. With this mindset, you can learn to accept and even appreciate the twists and turns that life presents. You'll find that with each rejection, you're not only building resilience but also discovering your authentic self in the process. Now, as we conclude, I encourage you to make a commitment to your personal growth. Start today by reflecting on a recent rejection you've faced. Write down what you learned from that experience and how it can inform your future actions. Share your insights with others and create a supportive network that uplifts and motivates you. If you found value in this exploration of Stoic philosophy and its application to rejection, please take a moment to subscribe to the Stoic Vivu channel. Your subscription helps us bring more practical wisdom to those seeking guidance in navigating modern life's challenges. Like this video, share it with friends or anyone who might benefit from these insights. And let's spread the message that rejection is not a dead end but a doorway to new possibilities. In closing, remember that you are not defined by rejection. Embrace it as a necessary part of your journey toward growth and fulfillment. With the tools of Stoic philosophy at your disposal, you are equipped to create a rejection-proof life, one where you pursue your passions without fear and find strength in every experience. Your journey starts now. Embrace rejection, learn from it, and watch as it transforms your life.